Good day and welcome back. So in this episode we're going to dig into the main motor, and that's basically that whole piping bottle nozzle thing that sticks on the back end of the Eagle. This is one of the more complicated, well, I don't want to say complicated, one of the more fiddly parts of the assembly. I know I mentioned the cages earlier on, and you know how getting that orientation there is kind of a little bit difficult. This is probably the one where you really want to make sure you have your attention focused. For those folks who are fans of the Space 1999 Eagle, this also is one of those iconic pieces of the Eagle. It's all that piping and everything that looks, 1970s realistic-ish. It actually is one of the things that really sold the design on me as a kid, is just the way the Eagle went together. In all of the representations for the main motor, in the early model releases of the Eagle, they were just like really simplified. And as I understand, these are different from the other 22-inch version of Eagle 2, or of the Eagle. So there's a 22-inch version that was released prior to the Lab Pod one. This is Eagle 2. It does have different piping for main motor, and that is, when they built the thing for the show, they built it differently because they were putting it all together. They just did something to make it work. So this model kit is meant to represent and reproduce Eagle 2, which is the other version of this. Now, I have the first one. I have the Eagle 1 model kit, but I haven't really dug into it because I really wanted to do the Lab Pod version. So maybe at some point in the future I'll build that one up and actually do a compare of the two. But with that said, this is my work on building main motor, and what I ran into and what I ended up doing. So with that, let's go ahead and just cut to it. Alright, so let's get stuck in. So I mentioned in my previous video that step 19 had to do some work on those spheres. They had holes in them that don't belong. So I need to go back and clean them up, which I did. I filled them up. I basically did a fill. And I was hoping that by sanding them down, I'd be able to keep the shape of that raised band that goes around, because at least one of these is going to be straight on the outside where it's visible. Unfortunately, I didn't get what I wanted. So I had to pull out my trusty dusty paneling method, which is essentially either really thin styrene or paper. In this case, I used paper. Just didn't have styrene handy, and this works. I've done this before. Just cut a strip of paper that's the diameter of the band that's on that, and it works because of the depth of that particular band. Clean up the edge right where that will go. Reach over, grab hold of my super glue, and then just CA the spot. I did it on all of the ones that had this, and you just kind of put the CA in, and then I used my knife in this case. Use a wax pencil or whatever it takes to get things put in place, and then just go around, and each one of these guys that has that problem, you just do that for. And I fixed the band that way. That was pretty straightforward. Once I had all them, I had to move on to getting these other small pieces off the sprue. Now these are really, really fine, really thin, and as you can see, like that one broke, but the mold seam line is just incredibly pronounced on those too. So if you care, which I did, and you want to clean those off, you really need to do it while it's on the sprue. At least I chose to do it on the sprue because I felt like it gave a lot more of the rigidity I needed to take care of that. Only had a few places left that needed to be touched up after I did that, and so I do what I normally do, which is cut the sprue, then go back and trim it up, and then I just use my fingers to support it while I clean those parts up. Again, that's pretty straightforward. But if you're careful, you can make sure that you get those nice and neat. They are really fiddly, so just take your time and be patient. Next up are the nozzles, or the main tanks. And those are more than a little bit frustrating, not nozzles, but the main tanks for the nozzles. Those are a little bit frustrating just because it's hard to find them, and fortunately the engineering forces you to actually put them together right. Some are holes, some have pegs. They fit together well, but they won't fit together wrong. And finding them on the sprue is difficult because the numbers are just hard to read. I ended up hitting them with a highlighter so I could find the things. Once I got that done, once I was able to find the right ones and get them together, they did go together fairly quickly and fairly well, and that solved most of my issues there. Then I was on to step 22. The pieces number 264, they are keyed, so they go in. They also go in pretty tight. The way I did this is I did step 22, then I put part 275 from step 24 and the two spherical assemblies together. I ignored the little fiddly parts for the time being. I just got those pieces together as an assembly. Once I got that in, I hit it with CA, or not CA, but extra thin, and let it set up. And pretty much I let that wait for a day. Then I was on to do the parts that are in step 25. And you can see like I highlighted those are keyed. The nice thing about it is the way they are is they actually show you your orientation, which is nice. And again, the tolerances on these are really tight. You still need to sand off your mold lines, but the tolerances are pretty tight, so they will go in snug. And what I found is it was easier to do the tip that was toward the center, so the ones that were where the nozzles are going to go. It was easier to do that first and then come in and click in the one to the outside of the main cage. It is a little bit fiddly, but fortunately if you've let the previous assembly sit up and set, then this isn't that difficult because it will maintain all of its orientation. So go through, do all that piece, and you want to just get that in. Then again, I hit it with extra thin. Once I got all these put in, I didn't glue each one. What it is, I got them in place, then I went around and I ignored the little fiddly parts. I glued these in, right? And then I let that set for another day, okay? And then that was that. Final part of this was putting in those main tanks, and unfortunately I lost the video for this. Again, your orientation matters, and it's pretty obvious. It's pretty easy to do. Just get those put in, and those tips will find. And then you basically just thread through those really thin parts and glue them into the spots that they key into. Once I did that, I taped it up to snug it all together, then I let it sit for another day, and essentially the main motor assembly was done. Well, okay, not quite done. The last bit was painting little stripes on these little mini pipes. There are transfers for these, but they're really fiddly, and I don't like the way they looked. So all I did was follow this process, just paint little circles around each and every one of these pipes. Really isn't that hard, pretty straightforward to do. Alright, while I was doing main motor, I went ahead and did the spine booster as well. This kit actually goes together very quickly, very straightforward. The engineering is great. The only real issue is these little clips. You really need a wide flat screwdriver to open up the clip so you can put the Phillips head screwdriver in. They're a little fiddly, they're a lot fiddly, but they do go in okay. Other than that, the kit goes together really, really well. The engineering is good. Just pay attention to like that hole you need to drill there, the orientation. It's great. It paints up, it goes together well. Once I got it all together and painted, hit it with transfers, and then went back, did the detailing again. It's the same detailing methodology we saw earlier, where it's just a really, really light, subtle pin wash going back and forth. If you can notice the little black stripes on the piping, again, yellow stripes by the orange tanks, same as with main motor. There are transfers for it. I don't like them. They don't want to fold nicely, so I just painted them. So as I do that, I go through here, hit this whole thing using the exact same weathering process I'm going to use throughout the entire build of this kit. I think that gives some bit of weathering, makes it not look like a toy. It actually takes that toy look out, or makes it look less toy-like, I guess, and gives it just a subtle bit of weathering without being coated with grime and filth and whatever. It really doesn't take much. Just a little touch of what I'm using here is just like a dark brown, and it fills in the shadows, gives some definition, and there you go. I like the way it looks. I like the way this piece came out. I ended up using AK real metal for the nozzles there. We'll touch on those when we do those for the main motor later. But in the end, this is what I had for this. This will now go into the box and wait for the final assembly of the Eagle there at the end. And there we go. That's kind of what I've gotten done this week. And there we go. That is the main motor and the spine booster assembly done, or as done as it's going to be for now. I did do, and this is how I am handling a lot of this kit, is I am doing a lot of the painting and weathering in stages. I'm going to cover that. I'm going to try and, if I do things the way I want them to, I'll have all that in its own video there here near the end as I get all this assembled. But you can see with main motor, there are transfers that need to go on those tanks, and then there's weathering to do, and I found it easier to do the weathering with the painting that I did doing it now as a sub-assembly. When I did the spine booster, it's the same thing. So put the spine booster together. There really isn't a point to paint it as a sub-assembly the way it's put together, the way the kit's engineered, with the exception of the nozzles. The nozzles, I did use AK real metal, and that's the first time I'd use those, and I actually really kind of like it. But I'll touch on that when I touch on doing the other nozzles that I have for the Eagle. Put on the transfers, seal it, then go in and do the pin wash weathering. It really doesn't need a lot, and you can see it on those last pictures for the spine booster. That's really kind of the look I'm going for. Dirty but not filthy, right? Used but not abused. And I'll make decisions as I go through the assembly of this thing, and it may get a little more, a little less. We'll see how that goes. The beauty of doing oils, if you want it less, it's easy enough to fix. So there we go. That is doing the main motor assembly. There are some gotchas, but it's really patience. Just take patience with it. Doing the spine booster, again, just have patience. Really, the only thing that was a pain was those clips. Other than that's what we have here for this week. I hope that this video was helpful, useful, entertaining. As always, please feel free to put down any constructive suggestions in the comments. I do read them. I'm not a fan of rude criticism, so I don't react well to being rude. But please feel free to have an opinion. I'm fine with people who disagree with me. Just be polite. And I love feedback. I love guidance. I'm discovering, there's a reason my channel is what it's called. The journey is, it's my adventure. I'm learning things with every kit I do. This is a grail kit for me, so this is kind of a fun trip for me. I hope it is the same for you. Until next time, thank you very much. Happy modeling.